Welcome to Workforce Central, the official podcast of the National Association of Workforce Boards. Stay tuned as we explore the latest resources, thoughts, and trends in workforce development. And now, here's your host, Ron Painter.
Welcome to another edition of Workforce Central. I'm your host, Ron Painter from Washington, D.C., Robert Forrestal at the controls today. And I'm kind of excited to talk to my guest, Jay Lucas, Chairman and Managing Partner of the Lucas Group. Jay, welcome and thanks for joining me.
Well, delighted to be on part of this today, Ron.
And I'm really excited because as NAWB talks about federal investments of market-driven and business-led, Jay has a long history in the private sector. Over the past 20 years, he has helped numerous executives, investors, and management teams set up their strategic direction and grow their business. In addition, Jay is the founder of the Lucas Equity Fund that invests in small growing brands in a variety of industry sectors and applies their expertise to help them grow and create value. LB Equity currently has investments in 9 portfolio brands, which Jay has to keep you busy trying to figure out what's going on in their markets. What I'm really excited to talk about is Jay has been actively involved in both politics from the state level, having served 2 terms as a member of the New Hampshire House of Representatives, having been a gubernatorial candidate, but now involved in a really, I think, pretty cool initiative called Newport Sunshine Initiative. And Jay, we're going to be talking about small town America. So again, welcome and thanks.
Well, thank you very much. And, what's interesting, Ron, is that as you were describing my background, and yes, I have been in business for a number of years, also been involved in state government. But the work I'm doing right now in what's known as the Newport Sunshine Initiative is really the most rewarding work that I've really ever done in my entire career.
Well, it's a huge issue facing us, Jay. We hear often from workforce boards across the country in rural America, small town, like, what can I do? So I'm really happy you're joining us.
Well, and maybe just to set the background on this just a little bit, because I think probably many people will actually identify with this. I grew up in a small town. I grew up in the small town of Newport, New Hampshire, which is a town of about 6,000 people, nestled in the western part of New Hampshire, about 20 miles south of Dartmouth College, in a little area that's kind of gotten, I think, cut off from the main areas of transportation by the interstates. And when I was growing up, however, it was like a Norman Rockwell Main Street town. you knew I could literally go up and down that main street, and I knew the Kelly's Drugstore, Martin's Hardware, Harrington Jewelers, right up and down that street. And it was a bustling place on a Friday night or a Saturday afternoon. You couldn't get a parking place. And I went to Newport High School, and just a really great place to grow up. And essentially, what has happened is over the last 20, 30, 40 years, Newport, like so many other towns across the country, it's not unique, but in Newport, that beautiful Main Street is now not the same as it used to be. It's we got vacancies on the Main Street, or in many secondhand shops, and a lot of the jobs have left. Of course, in our area, we also have opioids and substance abuse. It's just a very, very different fabric to the town. And so literally last year, as I was driving through town with my wife back in January, something just came over us, and we just said, you know what? We're going to change this. We're going to revitalize Newport. And so we started. It was really just the 2 of us. And today we now have over 100 people involved in our initiative. And I'll just share what the name, it's called the Newport Sunshine Initiative. And let me just explain for just a moment.
I would, because I also, sunshine appears in your book called American Sunshine, Rays of Hope and Opportunity, which if somebody's listening and wants to figure out how to get a hold of that, they're going to be able to go out to our app, Workforce Central, and get a link to purchasing the book. But I am really interested in, so how did you start? What were the elements of the Newport Sunshine Initiative?
What's interesting is that I didn't know where to start, actually. So what I did is I called up my old high school teacher. And if you do and by the way, he was still teaching at this time. And so if you do the math on that, you've got to know he's been teaching for a long time. But he and his wife are both teachers in the Newport school system. And I figured that they would probably know, if they've been doing it for a long time, they'd know every family, every kid in town. They'd just be really connected to the town. And they could give me a sense of what's really going on. And so we sat down, we had brunch with them, my wife and I, and began to learn about the town. And what I'll say, and how the town had changed. And one of the shocking statistics I did learn at that brunch was that nearly, we graduate about 100 students per year in our senior class at Newport High School. And out of those 100 students, 2/3 of them never go on to any further education at all. And so we have to make sure that they get the training that they need in school to be productively employed. But that gives you a sense of kind of what had happened to the town over the years. And so from that meeting, we went down, we toured the high school, and then one night in January, I sent out an email to a number of people I had known in town and said, there's going to be a meeting on Friday morning at 11:30 at the Salt Hill Pub to revitalize Newport. And I didn't know if I get anybody to respond. But it was one of the most heartening experiences I'd ever had, because pretty much immediately after I sent that out, people came back and said, yeah, Jay, I'll be there. And another person. And what I could tell was that even though I was leading the effort, there was a latent desire to really contribute and try to change the town. And so we all did get together that morning or noon at the Salt Hill Pub. And really that was the kickoff to the effort. We had 12 people at that meeting. And since then, we've grown to a fairly large organization, and we're doing a number of initiatives that are beginning to revitalize the town.
So I may point out, Jay, you went from that 100 person graduating class on to Yale, to a law degree at Harvard, and as I said, to a career in international business. What are some of the things you're doing as you focus on Newport? And as I understand it, it's not the only small town that's now reaching out to you to say, "Hey, what's the formula? What's the secret that you discovered?"
Well, that's correct. So exciting initiatives that we have underway. You got to think a little bit out of the box, because the world has changed in the last number of years from the old economy that we had when I was growing up. And so, for instance, we developed a program called RISE, R-I-S-E, Reimagining Student Education, which is all about digital training and providing digital training for students in Newport. I developed it along with 3 entrepreneurial firms based in New York City. And the whole notion behind the program was to give students digital skills that would enable them to do things like coding and web design, and give them Java skills, so that once getting through this program, they would be able to live right in Newport and but still participate in the global economy doing digital projects. And one of the very interesting things that occurred as part of this, which I think you'll resonate with, Ron, is that we presumed that we were going to put 20 students through a program that was going to take 12 weeks. And as we began the program looking for applicants, instead of 20 high school students, which is what we believed we were going to be having in the program, only 3 of the 20 turned out to be high school students. The rest, there was a huge need for this kind of training for single moms, for people who are in their 20s, 30s, who've been through career changes or layoffs, and they really needed to develop these digital skills. And we found that this was an enormous need out in certainly in the Newport economy and the other towns that we've had contact with.
So, Jay, it's part of the story that you're right, really resonated with me. I'm kind of curious from your perspective, like what are some of the lessons that you walked away from with, this focus on now, I guess, post-high school people? Some thoughts that you want to share with us about as we think about skill development programs. What are some of the things that you observed that struck you?
Well, here's a riveting experience that was connected to this RISE program as we were developing it. I'll never forget this. This was actually transformational to me. And it talks a little bit about the two Americas that we have. And so here's what happened. I was standing. I was at one of we have these monthly Newport Sunshine Initiative meetings. I was right before the meeting. There's always a lot of activity, and the woman who was organizing the RISE program for us in town, administering it, was standing with another woman that she brought up, and she said, "Jay, I'd like to introduce this woman. I'll call her Christine. I'd like to introduce Christine to you. She would like to be part of your program. She's not a high school student." And then Christine went ahead and told me her story. She said, "Hi, Mr. Lucas. My name is Christine, and I can remember this almost verbatim. I'm 29 years old. I got married way too young. I have 4 children. The oldest is 11. My husband has seasonal work, only seasonal work, and we don't live week to week. We live day to day. I grew up in poverty. I don't want my children to grow up in poverty, but we don't have any opportunities here. And I see your RISE program as my only opportunity." And Ron, that hit me like a ton of bricks, because I had developed this program, which is, I think a great program for digital skills, but it's just a program. To Christine, however, this is really her whole life. This is her opportunity. From that, obviously, Christine is part of the program. But beyond that, sort of another event happened just shortly thereafter, about a month later. The same woman who introduced me to Christine said, "Jay, would you like to meet some other women in our town who have really tough lives like Christine?" And I said, "I'd love to." And we sat down. I brought them. We had lunch together. And since then, we've done a number of more meetings since then. I've really gotten to know them. And there are 5 women around the table. And as one example, the woman sitting beside me said she's taking care of her grandson because her son is in prison on opioids, on drugs. And as you went around the table, sort of very similar circumstances for the other women as well. But I'll tell you what I really took away from it was these women were not giving up. They had grit and determination, and even though they were getting, one step behind every month economically, they were still hanging in there. So what the Newport Sunshine Initiative really is all about is trying to address this issue where there are people who've been totally left behind. And these are the people we really care about and really want to make sure we provide some opportunities for them that will give them really the chance to have successful, productive, really bright futures.
The story, which I really appreciate, Jay, it raises two questions in my mind. Part of what I read in the American Sunshine, Rays of Hope and Opportunity, your book is, you're pretty convinced that this spirit that you tapped into in sending an email to your high school friends, you're pretty convinced that spirit is still alive in America across this country and just deep in America's small town. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, I see it every day when we're working the Newport Sunshine Initiative. And what I see is people who really care about their community. And we've fashioned the belief that there are really 2 elements of revitalizing our town, but I think this is true across America. That one element is economic, and that is how do you economically revitalize, provide jobs, provide opportunities, and that's one aspect of it. And it turns out that while it's important, and it probably is a prerequisite to the other category, it's not the most important. What really is critical is the second piece. And the second piece is all around positivity and the sense of community. Because I think there's a yearning around our country for that sense of community. You know, we've gotten detached from that ability to really feel like we belong, that we can contribute to our community. And that yearning is something that we're trying to reinstill in Newport. And what you find is it's not that difficult. People really want it, and they want to be part of this. They want to be part of the community, and they want to be part of something larger than themselves. So this Newport Sunshine Initiative has really caught fire. And I'd love to share with you one part of it that's not economic at all, but has taken off. It's basically gone viral. So if I may share that, Ron.
Absolutely, please.
So here's what happened. About 2 months ago, while we're doing all of these, what I think are really important initiatives within Newport Sunshine that are transforming the economy and bringing jobs in and really doing all those things that take time but are important to do, we also decided that it would be important to kind of brand our community, market what we're doing. And so somebody said, well, by the way, Newport is known as the Sunshine Town. That's been our nickname forever, for the last 80 years. And you'll see it on our signs, you'll see it on our newspaper. We're the Sunshine Town. So we decided, well, if we're the Sunshine Town, well, we ought to, maybe what we could do is something with flowers. Maybe we could plant flowers. And then somebody said, well, not just any flowers, let's plant sunflowers. So here's what, the movement is now afoot. And there are 2,800 packets of sunflower seeds that have been mailed out to every business and every household in town. The fields coming into town from all four directions are being planted with sunflower seeds. There are the school lessons that are being taught about sunflowers. There are kids drawing pictures of sunflowers. And even better, so there's the places, you can imagine the Instagram pictures later this year of sunflowers. But even better than all that, somebody else asked the question, well, Jay, what's the Guinness Book of World Records for the greatest number of sunflowers planted in a town? So we called up Guinness a couple weeks ago, and what we found out is, Ron, there's no record.
All right.
We're on our way. So by late August, maybe early September, we'll be having a sunflower festival in Newport. And I tell the story because it's not by itself really going to change the economics of the town, but it creates that positivity, that really spirit of can-do, and brings everybody together.
So the next time you join us, I'm going to be able to introduce you as like leading the effort for the world record. Let me just step out a second and remind folks, you're listening to Workforce Central, the official podcast of the National Association of Workforce Boards from Washington, D.C. I'm your host, Ron Painter. My guest today is Jay Lucas, chairman and managing partner of the Lucas Group. And we're talking about Newport Sunshine Initiative and really lots about small town America. Jay, I wanted to ask you, so workforce boards across the U.S. are business-led. The majority of the board is from the private sector. If I'm one of those private sector members sitting out there and I'm trying to think about, like, how do I get engaged? How do I raise the level of community engagement by myself, by business? What's the advice you want to give them?
Well, I think the key thing is to believe that you can actually achieve change by taking that first step. And we took that first step starting about 1.5 years ago, and we're starting to see the fruits of our work now. It's been a learning process, and we've learned a number of things that really go well, and I think we've established some best practices. I think we've also seen some areas that haven't gone quite as smoothly, and but those have been great learnings too. And as a result of that, other towns have begun to reach out to us. So within New Hampshire, and actually beyond New Hampshire, towns have been interested in our efforts. And so, because, as I had mentioned earlier, the long, slow decline of Newport's economy is not unique to Newport. But if you look at small towns across America, whether they be in upper New York State or in the Midwest, or they could be virtually anywhere in our country, we've seen this transformation, kind of go the wrong way, and there's an opportunity to bring them back. And so one of the things that we'll be initiating later this year is an idea about how we share some of those best practices. And it will be called, we've come up with a name for this, which I think is a kind of an inviting, engaging name, but we're calling it the Small Town Turnaround Club. And the Small Town Turnaround Club, I'm launching along with a close friend of mine, a former congressman, former ambassador to Denmark, Ambassador Dick Sweat. And together, we're going to be launching this program, which it will house a repository of best practices. It will be able to provide insight and recommendations on what can work, but it'll also be a repository for stories and anecdotes and just technologies that people can access as we try to turn around small town America.
Well, we look forward to, if you're open to it, we certainly look forward to having more conversation about how can we work with you and help you on that project. We support local workforce boards across the U.S. because we do believe people who live in communities are invested in communities. So let's show them a way to be a part of that. Jay, it's been great having you as a part of the conversation today. I can't imagine being around you and not having a can-do positive attitude. I really, it's been great to talk with you. If I want to learn more,
yes,
tell me where our listeners can go to learn more.
I think there are several places, but certainly one place where you can find everything is at jlucas.us. So it's Jay Lucas, LUCAS.us, jlucas.us. You can find out more about what we're doing on our Newport Sunshine Initiative. You can also find my book, American Sunshine, Rays of Hope and Opportunity there. And then in closing, Ron, I want to say thank you to you, but I also want to applaud and support the work that you're doing with the workforce development boards, because they really do play a very important, really a vital role in our communities. And it's just really important work. And I really thank you for inviting me to be part of your program.
Jay, it's been a pleasure. You've been listening to Workforce Central, the official podcast of the National Association of Workforce Boards. I'm your host, Ron Painter. It's been my pleasure to spend this time with Jay Lucas, chairman and managing partner of the Lucas Group, as we talk about small town turnaround. And as Jay mentioned, you can learn more at jaylucas.us. And you can get to that website from our app, Workforce Central. So again, Jay, appreciate it. Certainly, I'm going to invite you to join us again. We want to hear some more progress. So thank you.
Huge pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you all for listening. And we hope to have you back on Workforce Central for another podcast in the very near future. Again, from Washington, D.C., I'm your host, Ron Painter. Have a great day.